Noa Tishby is an actress, producer, activist, and now a published author. She was born and raised in Tel Aviv and served 2.5 years in the Israeli army before starring in Israel's hit show Ramat Aviv Gimel. She sold the Israeli TV show and treatment to HBO and is widely known as Israel's unofficial ambassador. Noa, welcome. I'm such a huge fan of yours, and I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's very much mutual, Megan.
Well, let's get right into it. Bill Maher describes your book, Israel, A Simple Guide to the Most Misunderstood Country on Earth, as, quote, not your bubby's history book. You're not exactly what comes to mind when one imagines a stodgy old academic. What motivated you to write this book, and have you been surprised by the response?
First of all, thank you so much for that. I have been surprised by the response because this is a book that has been endorsed by Bill Maher, who's incredible, and also by Ben Shapiro, which actually leads me to believe that I was able to do quite a balanced job. The reason I wanted to write this book is because I saw how fascinated people were with Israel, how much debate it brings up, how much passion it brings up. People are excited about it and are angry about it, but a lot of the times they actually don't know the facts and they don't have the facts straight. And a lot of people came up to me throughout the years and were like, is there a book that I can read, but like something that is fun, that is relatable, that gives me all the history in a way that's easy to understand? And I realized that that book just doesn't exist. So I decided to write it.
You know, Noah, one of the things you talk about is the unfair treatment Israel has received at the UN. In 2020, the General Assembly brought 17 resolutions against the Jewish state, which is more than the combined number of resolutions brought against Syria, Iran, and North Korea that year. What do you think prompts international bodies like the UN to treat Israel, a democracy, worse than these tyrannical regimes? And is there anything that can be done? And do you think it's easy for the American public to see this blatant hypocrisy?
I hope they see this. The United Nations, bless its heart, I love that organization. However, 53% of nation states that are members in the United Nations are non-democracies. A lot of them, first of all, definitely don't share our values here in the United States and Western civilization. And also, they do not want Israel to exist. So when you look at the history of the United Nations, you see political biases and political maneuvering of the first degree that's been happening for many, many, many decades. And what it had done is it created a false legitimacy from an international, respectable international body to kind of like give the anti-Israel movement a tailwind, which is a terrible idea when you think of Israel is the single consistent democracy in the entire Middle East, the only country which supports human rights, LGBTQ plus rights, the only country in which you could practice any religion you want freely. The world needs to support Israel. And if they don't, they need to figure out what it is and why it is that they don't. And the United Nations need to take a good look at itself in terms of the resolutions against Israel. This is disproportionate and it's insane.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I have been very vocal about my disappointment and how we've handled the vaccine rollout in this country. On top of distribution issues, there is a tremendous amount of hesitancy. Israel, on the other hand, has been the epitome of what a successful vaccine rollout should look like. I was particularly charmed by two different initiatives I saw. I keep saying the take a shot, get a shot, where you can obviously get the vaccine and then go out and take a shot of tequila if you want, and a separate initiative where they were giving shalent, and that's a sort of stew for Shabbat, I understand, to the ultra-Orthodox Jewish people, which inspired that kind of creativity in Israel. And why do you think it was lacking here? Because Israel really does seem to have done a better job marketing why we should all be getting the vaccine.
Israel did an extraordinary job with the vaccines. I was actually there in December when the vaccine operations started, and I was blown away. I saw how everybody in my family over a certain age was getting a text message, come on down to the clinic, get your shot. The other thing that I saw is how they did not throw away a single vaccine. So from day one, they would have text messages or Facebook page ads or whatever saying, oh, we have X amount of number of vaccines available. Please come down and take them. It was extraordinary. It's an entrepreneurial nature, and it's also a country that knows how to be under threat and in war. It was extraordinary to see. And then I was very proud of Israel, my homeland, and very concerned about what's going to happen here. And as I came back in January, I was like, oh my God, this is going to take us a minute. So I hope people really Wake up for it. We have a vaccination operation. It's going great, and we need to really step it up so we can get to herd immunity and get back to life. It's time.
Yeah, they're really the gold standard when it comes to vaccine rollout that I wish our country would look to for inspiration more. But in our country, in the United States, there are plenty of anti-Semitism disguised as anti-Zionism lurking on the right, but there's also plenty on the left. You talk about that right, the rights that the LGBTQ Arab Israelis enjoy in other parts of the Arab world. Members of the LGBT community are considered guilty of a capital crime and are sometimes put to death. Are you surprised that the progressive left is still inclined to write off Israel, oftentimes even calling for boycotts and sanctions against it? And, you know, this is something that I'm very passionate about and have spoken about many times on The View. And I find very, very, very alarming this radicalism we're seeing growing on both sides. Can you speak to that?
Absolutely. Look, I'm not only surprised by the left bashing of Israel and lack of understanding of the subject. I'm horrified by this. This is not just bad for Israel. This is bad for Western civilization. Israel, the single consistent democracy in the Middle East, the only country where you can actually make out with your same-sex partner on the beach and not get killed, which is what would happen to you arguably in the rest of the Middle East, is smack in the middle of cancel culture. And I'm not sure, I mean, I kind of understand how this happened, but I'm trying to make liberals understand that they are absolutely misguided on this. This is insane.
You know, Noah, there is a rise of anti-Semitism happening in this country, particularly in New York City. It's been very alarming. I lived in New York City since I was 18 years old. I've been very, very shocked and appalled by it, but I also see a lot of things happening in popular culture where if someone says something incendiary about a person that is racially motivated, they're forgiven a lot less easily than if they're anti-Semitic. For some reason, and I said this in regards to Nick Cannon, for some reason, if you say something anti-Semitic, for whatever reason, we culturally are a lot more forgiving a lot quicker. Why do you think that is?
I'm not sure why that is, but it's horrifying that it actually is going on. It's as if, I mean, look, anti-Semitism has been around since the days of the Jews, right? It goes back thousands of years. But for some reason, in the past 4 or 5 years, it became okay again. Like you see these like riots in Charlottesville, and the people walking around, they're not even covering their face. You know, the Jews are 0.2% of the U.S. population, are amounting to 50% of religious-based hate crime in the United States. That's something that we need to be concerned of and we need to speak up against. If people think that anti-Semitism is not around and not a thing, they are absolutely wrong. And the thing is this, right? This subconscious bias that people have against Jews and this anti-Semitism that now became so popular is masquerading itself right now as anti-Israel and anti-Zionism. And anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, because if you are against one country and only one country in the world, and that country also just happens to be Jewish, we may need to have a conversation about your opinions and your subconscious biases.
I was actually surprised that the first time I said that I was a proud Zionist on TV, I couldn't have even fathomed the kind of reaction. It didn't occur to me that that is something controversial to say on national television, but absolutely shocking. But I want to move on to something lighter. You sold and are in treatment to HBO, but that's far from the only Israeli export to American TV. Whether it's Homeland, Unorthodox, Euphoria, or Tehran, there are so many popular shows here whose roots are in Israel. Why do you think that is? And do Americans understand that as the Israeli audience the same way Israelis understand the American audience?
The reason for that is that Israeli entertainment television is highly creative. It's very small. It doesn't have a lot of money, so it needs to be very clever. So the scripts are super strong. The characters are super strong. The storylines are super strong, which is what American audiences love. And I hope this would make people in America realize how similar Israelis and Americans are. Like it's the only country in the Middle East which shares the exact same values as we do here in America and Western civilization. It shows up in this clever television that everybody admires and adores, whether they know it's an Israeli format or not. You guys are probably watching it. Mm-hmm. And I hope there are going to be many more to come.
Well, Noah, I just want to thank you so much for taking time to talk to me today. I'm a huge fan of your work and your book. I wish you nothing but all the best. I hope your book gets turned into a HBO show soon. We want to thank Noah for joining us, and best of luck with everything in the future.
Thank you so much, Megan. Thank you so much for your support.